Hey, good morning, West Coast. Ali After back with a brand new video. Today's finance talk. Today's date is May the 12th of 2018. So today we're going to go over a very interesting subject, and it's the idea and concept of funding your business, specifically going through a business funding application. The reason why we're going to be doing this is because in the past, a lot of people came to me and in anticipation of funding their business, they brought me their credit files, which weren't, of course, perfect. And of course, there are a lot of inconsistencies as to how to use a perfect credit to get the funding you need. But when it comes to business funding, there are so many different elements outside of your credit that we'll have to look at collectively. And this includes, of course, the history of your business. If it's brand new, there are factors like your personal credit, of course. But beyond that, all right, beyond that, we also have to consider, some of the things like what kind of assets does your business have? What kind of income is it making? Do you have property that you use to collateralize the funding when it comes for your business? So let's go over these things, thoroughly. Let's go over the application process so that we can review it together here in today's finance talk. So first of all, if you're new to my channel, just a heads up, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn the bell notification on. So every time there's a brand new video like this, you'll be first to be notified. And if you like the content that you see today throughout the entire video, please give this video a thumbs up. That'll be greatly appreciated. And if you have any feedback, comments, or questions and concerns, you feel free to leave that below this video. I'll be more than happy to answer you. So let's go over the funding application for the business together one by one. So we'll go over the sections and, of course, what's required. Now, this is a very thorough application, right? And the reason why I say that is because most business funding applications are one page and they miss out the most important components, and they will probably ask you for documentation afterwards, which is very, very much a huge nuisance. And going back and forth is not really, the best choice here. So you want to try to minimize the time in which you're actually getting documentation together to effectively maximize the opportunity to get funding while saving a lot on time. So this business application is very thorough in terms of questionnaire, different sections, and of course, what you need to go through to maximize your time for efficiency's sake. Okay, so here we have the first section, which is the personal identification information. Of course, this is very important. Now, one of the biggest things you want to realize is if you're doing this based on the merits of your personal, sorry, not personal, but your business credit just on its own, like let's say if you have 80 PAYDEX, you have a good business score with Experian, as well as Equifax Business, and you just have established, many different trade vendor accounts there, revolving credit, and you feel that you want to just go based on the merits of your business, then you can actually just leave this section right here where it says social security number. You don't have to fill that up. Okay, so you can actually leave that blank. But if you want to guarantee your personal, your business via your personal, and you can actually add the social security number there and your date of birth, that'll be great. Okay, so the first thing is, of course, you want to fill up your full name, right? So you don't want to miss out anything. Just include, even if you have a middle initial, just put it there. So let's say, John Eric Doe, you can just put that, and we can use that as a your application, which has to be thorough. Then you have your phone number. Now, the reason why it's important to put a cell phone here instead of a residential is because sometimes, with our associates and even business partners on a banking level, they will contact you. So you want to have, let's say, the most up-to-date phone number. So, whatever number it is, just put it there and we will contact you. Okay. And that has to be something like a mobile number that you can be reached at easily, which is very critical for us because we will contact you. So it's the same name that you have on your driver's license or the exact same name as a passport. Then you have your email, of course, the one that you regularly check. So let's say if it's John Eric Doe at gmail.com, then just put that. That's fine. Here's a suggestion I have for you. If you have a website, if you have something that you've set up for your business, the most important thing is you want to put it under your company name. So if you have a company email address, then that's preferable. So you can put it under your company name. And then, of course, that will make it a lot more credible when we're looking and reviewing your business application. Okay, so that's the section here. Now, fax number, typically a lot of businesses out there don't necessarily use that at this time, just because today's modern and technology is modern. But initially, what it is like a lot of other vendors that you have to go through if you build business credit. If not, then just to give you a heads up that when you're working with certain vendors, they will require that you have a fax number. Now, it doesn't have to cost a lot. You can actually register one for very cheap. I recommend onesuite.com. They're pretty good. You have Metrofax. There are a couple other services out there, HelloFax. But you can actually get a fax number that you can use to actually register and then you just put in a fax number there. So in our case, Best Credit Resources fax number 718-887-0470, and just put it there and fill that up. Now, again, we go through this section as a social security number. Now, this is only if you want to personally guarantee your business funding. A lot of people don't want to do this, and some people do. If you want to get more than 50,000, of course, you might want to consider this element. And I'm saying 50,000 as in like if you're just recently opened your business, it's been 6 months or so. If you've been in business for 10, 20 years, you can actually get funding based on the merits of your business, given how much income you make and what kind of assets you have, as well as the business credit you've established over the years. So you have credibility there. But those who are new or establishing business for the first time or have just recently opened their business and it's been less than a year, and you want to personally guarantee your business to get more than 50,000, then this section you can fill up. If not, then you just leave it blank. You fill up your date of birth, and then of course now we go to the corresponding information. This part here is important because what we do is we do a background on the property. So let's say if you actually type on a property address here, you fill it up. So let's say 123 I don't know, Ginger Street. You have a suite number, so let's say it's 1400. Your city is, let's say, New York, and then state is New York. And your zip code is 1001. Now we're gonna ask you, hey, like, do you own this property? So if you say yes, then we're going to do a background check to make sure that there's no because sometimes what we can do is we can cross collateralize business loans, and we can actually issue funding based on the actual property you have in combination with your business income and your credit or the business credit. Now if you don't want to do that, you can simply just say that, and when you submit your application, state that, look, you don't want to use the business or this residential address or wherever it is that you are as collateral. Okay, and you can actually just mention that when you submit your application. But we will look at that. Is the property owned by you? Yes. Are you renting this property? Clearly no, if you own it. So we go in that measure. And if you say yes, you are renting it, then of course that means that you have some expense every month, and we will actually ask you to submit whatever lease agreement you have or whatnot, just to review that you can actually afford the business loan we're about to give you, because we want to make sure that you're not in the chance of default, or you're not going to fall behind because your financial condition is not stable enough for you to leverage the funding that you're asking for. Next is the business information. Now, the business information is critical because there are so many different components here. So let's say your business is Joe Eric Consulting LLC. Okay, you can actually have a DBA. DBA is essentially if you're using another business name. That can be something else, like Joe Eric's shop or something like that, right? So you have your DBA name, and that DBA name is doing business as. That's all it means. And a lot of companies out there typically don't use this, but I've seen quite a few LLCs that use DBA names just for the sake of, because they had a brand before they actually registered their own business, and they couldn't register that because it was taken or some sort of issue like that, or it's in a different state. You can actually use a DBA name. Now, most of the people don't have this, so it's not something you want to be concerned about. But if you do, you want to mention that, because we will check into that. Of course, you want to say which state your business was registered in. And let's say if your state was New York, then what we do on our end is we actually look at this company. We look at the Secretary of State, look at, of course, if it was registered or not. So we do a review on that. And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that we are lending to a legitimate business institution. Next, you want to put in how many years you've been in business. So if you say I've been in business for 5 years, then that's really good, right? So because you have business history there. So that's good. Next, you want to choose your type of business. Now you have so many different type of companies and structures that you can choose. Typically, a lot of people will have the limited liability company. So you have the LLC here. The C corporation is typically for companies who want to get funding in the future. So I'll give you an example. If you go through an LLC and you're looking for angel investors in the future, the possibility of them coming to your LLC, yeah, it can happen, but they'll most probably tell you to restructure your company into a C corporation where you can issue, different class shares. So typically, a C corporation, if you want to start with that, it's slightly more expensive. There are certain tax obligations a little bit more thoroughly than an LLC, which is a pass-through entity. But if you do a C corporation, and if you're looking for angel investors in the future, you're looking to grow your company to the point where you can issue shares so that you can bring in investors compliantly, of course, then C corporation would definitely be a choice for you. Some people have sole proprietorship, right? So you can look at that. One thing to understand, though, if you have a sole proprietorship, most probably you will not get the funding you need. Will go based solely on your personal credit and your personal assets. So I strongly recommend anybody who's looking through this business funding application just to get funding, whether for a real estate deal or to acquire a business, consider, at least incorporating a limited liability company, or at least look at a C corporation if you're looking to raise some capital. So that's a recommendation I have for you. You also have investment club LLCs. Typically, these are entities that, if you have a lot of people at the same time who want to invest their money into one company and then make collective decision on where to invest that money as a group, then that's an investment club LLC. Under the SEC, you're allowed to do that. You can appoint a manager, of course, as a collective group. But if you have an investment club LLC and you're looking for funding, then you would have to put in all the people who are part of that company as well, including, their personal information, where their residences are, and if they want to guarantee personally for the funding, then they can actually put their social security and everything that we need to process their personal guarantee. So you have that. You also have an international business corporation. That's for companies that are coming from the outside. Let's say Belize, if you're coming from St. Kitts and Nevis, Bahamas, Cayman Islands. You also have these for Seychelles or even Cyprus. So these type of companies are typically from the outside. They're coming into the United States. They have their own EIN number within the U.S. And from that, you can actually establish corporate credit on these IBCs as well. Of course, you'll have to register as a foreign entity within the state that you want to do business in. But it's something that, you want to consider. And then you have other structures that we can go into. It's going to take too long for me to explain on this video, but you have the business trust, which is a IRS 1041 taxable structure under the complex trust rules. And of course, you can actually build business credit for a nonprofit corporation, which is a 501c3. So 501c3s actually can establish business credit. It's just that they're treated like any other companies, just they don't make money, but they can borrow, right? So that's something that we have there as an option for you to choose. Now, once you have that chosen, then you have the number of directors. The reason why we ask this is because if you're asking to personally guarantee the company and you have, let's say 2-3 other people in there with equal amount of shares as you, then that's very critical. So we need to know that. So let's say you have 3 people, right? And they say, okay, well, I have 3 people as directors. You give your company EIN number, whatever that number is. And then you actually go in here and you say, well, who are your directors, right? So you stated you have 3 directors. So we know for a fact the person applying for this is Joe Eric Doe. Sorry, John Eric. What did I write? Yeah, John Eric Doe. Awesome. So John Eric Doe here, right? So let's say John Eric Doe owns 25%. Or actually, it's got to be 33.33% because you want equal shares as the other 2 directors. The second director could be, let's say, Mr. Dave Smith. Okay, Dave Smith actually owns 33.33%, and then you have, Jessica Jones. Okay, Jessica Jones, maybe she owns 33.33% of this company. So now you have the list of directors. And one of the critical things to understand is once we know that for a fact other people own more than 10% of your company in here collectively, and they have let's say 33.32%, you want to make sure that every single individual within that director list signs up and actually completes the same application as you are. Very, very important. Okay. Now we go down and say, has the business, do you want to, or does it have its own credit? Does the business, if we pull, let's say, business credit on your company, have you established this credit in the past? If you have, definitely you want to use that. And the reason why is because you can actually get more funding with that, right? So if you have established that, just mention it, yes. And if you're not sure, right? If you're not sure, what you can do is you can actually go and pull it off in nav.com. You can see your business credit. There's a paid membership, I think. It's not a lot. It will show you all the different scores, Dunn's number with Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, Experian. So if you haven't done that, then, you don't want to say yes. You can say no. Or if you're not sure, just say no and check your business credit before you actually complete this, right? So let's say you have that. Let's say your Dunn's number, you put whatever number it is. Let's say your Equifax or Dunn's Paydex score. So let's say 80. 80 is pretty good, right? Then you have your score rating at Equifax Business. Maybe it's 780. I'm not sure there. Again, here at Experian, same thing, 780. So, these are credit scores for your business. So we look into that and we see, okay, wow, your business is established. You made some money. You've established some positive credit for your business, which means on its own merit, it can possibly borrow money without the need to go back to personal guaranteeing it, depending on how much you're asking for, again, and how much history you have with the business. Given in this situation and your application, we said that you're in business for 5 years. So perhaps, you can actually leverage the business credit that you already have to get the type of funding you need. So let's just consider these elements, okay? Now, does the business have at least 2 years of tax assessment? Assuming that you've been in business for 5 years, like we mentioned here, we want to see some tax assessment. Even if you haven't made enough income in the first 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, you have to file your taxes on time. So we want to make sure that the IRS is not after you, or once we start giving you your money and you have access to capital, that they don't come and seize your accounts because you haven't paid your taxes or have not submitted statements. So you want to be careful with that. So provide us with your last 2 years of tax assessment, of course. And that's important because we will look into that if you've been in business, of course, for more than 2 years. We want to know how much money you've made pre-tax revenue this year. So let's say if the fiscal year has not ended and you still have a couple of months, prorate that, meaning you don't have to include the entire projection of the year, but just how much you've made so far. We'll have a pretty good estimate. Also, how much bank deposits in the average in the past 6 months, right? So if you have, let's say, $150,000 a month of deposits on average, you want to include that. So this way, we know that, okay, you're pretty stable. Your pre-tax revenue, let's say you're making, I don't know, like $450,000. Just let us know. It's important. We can look into the stability of your company. We can have an estimate in terms of whether or not you can afford the financing you're asking for, and whether or not you're in condition to leverage it. This is an important question. Now, a lot of people, when they come into business funding scenarios and they ask, hey, look, Ali, I want to borrow, let's say, $250,000 or $400,000. Typically, they can do it if they've been in business for enough years, like let's say 5 years, and possibly we may ask for personal guarantee. But in other circumstances where you don't have the personal guarantee, business doesn't have much revenue, but you have business assets that we can leverage, then possibly that's something that we can look into. So if you have business assets, you want to say that, yes, you do have business assets, and, you give us an estimation of how much they're worth. So let's say your first business asset is equipment, and you have, let's say, $210,000 of equipment. And you just say, look, what type of asset is this? We'll just say it's equipment. So this way we know, okay, well, you have $210,000 in terms of assets, which is equipment. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to give you full face value of your equipment, as equipment also over time loses its value. So we'll have to do a certain loan to value on that. But let's say past that equipment, let's say you have, let's say you're in a software business and you have a patent. So your patent is actually worth, $25,000. Then you let us know what kind of asset that is, and you say it's patent and it's been registered and it's everything is approved. So that's actually worth $25,000. That's intellectual property. So there are so many different type of asset classes you can include, right? You can say that you have a $290,000 building, right? So property. So you can say what type of asset? Property. So of course, if you mentioned this here already, do you have a property personally? Yes. Okay, but that means your business can also have its own property. Like let's say if you're running a garage. And you have that building that you own, and there are tenants upstairs or whatever, and like a mixed-use building, that can be used as an asset as well. Given that, of course, it's free and clear, and even if it's not, even if you have a mortgage in it and you still have some equity left over, that's something that we can absolutely leverage. So you want to include that information there as well. Then finally, you want to give us as much detail as possible about what kind of business you're in. Describe your business activity. The reason why we need this information is because underwriting decisions are made on this, right? So if you're saying, well, look, I have all these assets, I have great credit personally, I have great business credit, but I'm in the business of, let's say, something risky, right? Like gambling or casino, then possibly we cannot give you the money because so many different things can happen. Even though a casino can be considered a cash cow, there are a lot of other risks, government risks, licensing risks, so all these type of things can be risky for us. Even like, for example, a lot of lenders won't touch restaurants. And even if, you have a great concept, you're a great chef, you have significant experience, if the concept hasn't been tried and tested and there's no sort of credibility or backing from what you're trying to launch, even though you have business assets, just for the sake of not going through the headaches of collecting those assets in case you default, we just may not approve the business. So you want to be careful with that. When it comes to restaurants, there are so many other ways of raising the capital. I wouldn't recommend business funding because you need some months until you establish yourself, until you start making some cash flow before you can start affording those payments. So you'll have to have some cash reserves on the side anyways. And definitely when you borrow for money for business, it requires you to have regular payments being made so you can actually not default, right? So, or the loan be called back because you're not making your payments on time, particularly in a 90-day period. So you want to be careful with that, right? So describe as much as possible your business activity. Your SIC code is important. That's basically a business identifier with the government, depending on the type of business you're in. So if you don't know what that is, you can actually look it up. Depending on your business, they have a whole category, so you can find that. Then you want to tell us if you have any outstanding judgments, liens, or encumbrances. And the reason why we don't know this is, let's say if you have a pending case against your business right now, and you're borrowing money, and let's say the other party wins the case or judgment against you, then because we just gave you funding, now what happens is because you have cash, those other parties can actually seize your bank account and go after the cash that we just lent you. So we want to know if you're actually going to be a liability for us or even potentially for our investors. So you want to let us know that. You want to be as transparent and as open as possible. If you do have these type of judgments in place and it's taken a little while, we can always help you and get you funding later. We just don't want to be stuck in the middle, but you just have to let us know. Okay, so if you're not, then you're good. We don't have to worry about that. And here you want to describe as much as possible in reference to how you're going to use the money. So if you're saying, well, look, Ellie, I want to expand my business. So you can say for business expansion, I should say for marketing, talk about hiring new staff. So you want to be as detailed as possible. So once we know for sure that you're using it for, you know, legitimate business purposes, and there are some purpose for that, and you're telling us, look, the reason why I'm going to make more money if I expand my business, do some marketing and hire new staff is because here's the evidence of it, right? And then we can go together on and review that information, and of course we'll know for sure that there are probabilities, positive probabilities there. Here's some personal credit reference information on the next section, section D. This is your personal guarantee, right? So once again, you type in the full name. The guarantor could be yourself. It could be somebody else, a third party that that was willing to co-sign for you. So you put their information here. You let us know their scores on each credit bureau. We don't do, like, let's say Equifax only, TransUnion only. We don't believe in that. We believe the scores to be, an average score on all three bureaus. We'll look at those and we'll make our decision on that. And then, of course, you want to tell us if you're able to provide a tri-merge report. Now, this is important because that means that you can actually pull it off. We can pull it off for you on our side. Typically, we do that as part of our application process. So if you're able to provide your own, that's great. You can do that, and we'll look at it. If not, then, like I said, we will do it ourselves just to confirm the details. Of course, you can add more guarantors as we go past. Typically, here you can actually put your directors. So let's say you had 3 other directors, John Eric Doe. You had the other director, which we have here, Dave Smith, and you have Jessica Jones. So you can actually put these people as guarantors here as you're filling up your business application, so we can actually look into that. You don't have to put all the way up to 5. If you have 5 guarantors, great. If you don't, that's fine. Even if you have 1, that's okay. We just want to make sure that you have somebody. If you don't want to personally guarantee, then that's okay as well, so long as your business has the credit and the merits of the credit that we can utilize to get you the funding. So going down in section E, we'll talk about personal assets and income. This is critical, as I mentioned, that if you want to actually personally guarantee it, aside from your credit, if you have, let's say, assets that we can look at, then we can utilize that. Now, let's start with your income. Of course, if you're borrowing for your business and your business is not profitable yet, it's not making money, can you personally, ensure that the business loan is not going to default, that you'll be able to sustain and make the payments on time? So to review that, you let us know your personal income. So in this situation, let's say your personal income is $150,000 a year. You tell us what kind of income it is. Typically, you want to tell us whether it's within the job outside of your business, because if you're not fully committed, possibility of us actually helping you with this business loan is very slim. If you're actually getting by income from your business and you're paying yourself, that's fine. We can look in that. What type of other income do you have? Do you have any other sources of income? If you do, then you want to mention them. And if you don't, then just click on the no. So you don't have to fill that up if you don't have any. Now look at your assets. So this is important also, because if you want to personally guarantee with your credit, you can also personally guarantee with your assets. Now the reason why this is important is because you can actually get favorable terms by leveraging your asset, given your score is good. So we have banking connections that we can help you with to get you long-term funding, let's say, 10, 15 years, second mortgages even. But let's look into this consideration. Now, you tell us what kind of asset it is, right? So is it a personal property or is it a third-party collateral? A third-party collateral is a guarantor willing to, assign his assets over to us, so long as, your business is making payments on time. We don't have to take that asset. But if not, then you do personal property, and you let us know, like, what kind of the value of that asset is. Excuse me while I drink a little bit. Perfect. So you let me know that, what kind of asset it is. If it's personal property, you can actually list the value of that. So let's say if it's a home and it's valued at 395,000, you let us know that, and we're going to look at that, and we're going to see if there's any type of deed of trust or any type of mortgages, and we'll look into what we can actually issue you against that. So if you have personal assets, then that's something we can look into. Definitely, we'll consider that. Now, going down here, we have something called a risk assessment for your business. The risk assessment is very critical because we need to know whether or not your business is going to succeed. But we need to make an evaluation on whether or not it's something that we're willing to underwrite. Now, typically in a scenario like this, there's a lot of people who borrow unsecured money, so they don't go through this analysis, but we do because we're very careful with our investors, particularly in the banking system, and our, of course, underwriters here. So we just want to be very careful with that. So let's look at that. Okay. Has the business owner filed bankruptcy in the last 2 years? If you've done so, the possibility of us giving you money, and depending on your creditors and list of creditors in the bankruptcy, we can actually pull it up on our side to see who they are. But if we see that there's a lot of banks that you defaulted on and you filed bankruptcy, there's a very slim chance that we'll give you funding for that. Okay. So you just want to be as transparent as possible here. But let's say if you have not filed bankruptcy. Okay. So that's good. Does the business owner have any outstanding collection accounts? Now, sometimes it happens that you'll forgot that you moved and you paid the bill, but you have like $10 outstanding, or I don't know, like $100 outstanding, and it's from Verizon and they sent it over to like Diversified Consultants or something. If it's something as small as that, that's no issue, but you still want to let us know that because we want to see if you have any outstanding collection accounts. If you don't, then even better. So that means that you don't have that. So you just click on the no. Are there any judgments, liens, or legal activities currently affecting the business owner? The reason why we asked that is, like, remember we talked about the business scenario. If there's any type of liens or judgments against you, or any type of pending cases, we don't want to be stuck by giving you money and then the other party wins and then they come and fetch our money that we just gave you, and now we're stuck in their position. So it's same concept with you as a business owner. If your business is under your name, that constitutes a personal property, that constitutes like an asset of your own, even though the business is fully protected. But there are people, particularly in tort law, that they can surpass that, and there are so many different type of variables that we just don't want to risk, our funding in those scenarios. So if you're actually going through any type of current cases legally, whether it be a judgment, whether it be civil suits, all these type of things, even criminal cases, you just have to let us know. It's very critical that we look into that before we can issue you funding. It's important that you're very transparent, because if we do find this information while we're doing our due diligence and you say no, there was no cases, automatic, immediate denial for your business. And of course, with our parties and our groups, we don't joke around with these type of things. Okay. Also, you want to let us know, does the business owner have more than 25% share in other businesses? If you're not 100% in this business and you have other businesses out there, for example, that we're not aware of, and you let us know, like, yeah, I do have other businesses, and we figure out that that other business is actually currently under legal investigation, or some sort of civil case, or let's say a federal case, and because you own part of that, it can affect this business indirectly. So we just don't want to be part of that. We just prefer to keep our underwriting decisions very simple. Typically, we want a clean slate. I know that not everybody's going to have that, particularly with their personal credit, but with these type of things where it involves cases and legalities and federal government, as well as civil suits, these are sensitive areas for us. We just don't want to touch those type of files. So just let us know ahead of time so that we can, avoid the whole process altogether. Has the business owner raised any capital based on issuing securities? Now, this part right here is, let's say if you've been in a business, like I said, remember we talked about raising capital, not with your LLC, but by structuring your company as a C corporation. If you're looking for angel investors, then that's definitely something that you would do through a securities offering, right? That would be registered with the SEC, and then of course, if you say yes, then typically you want to go after accredited investor. So you can have a 50 regulation D 506C, which would be like, you can issue securities to unlimited amount of investors as long as they're accredited investors and they have to meet those demands. So that's critical. We look at that. And of course, if you're borrowing, that means, with these type of issued securities out there that you raise capital for, we want to know exactly, are you just simply borrowing money to pay off your existing investors? If so, then possibly we don't want to be in their position. But if it's just to borrow and the investors approve that you're borrowing for expansion, and then they just want to leverage, then by all means, that's fine as well. So we also want to know exactly how much outstanding debts the business owner has. The reason why we want to know that is that, once we give money to your company, we want to make sure you're not just taking that money and paying off your personal debts so you can get out of a mess. We want to make sure that you're actually using that funding for legitimate business growth, for business purposes. This is very critical, right? So you let us know this amount, whatever it is, and we can just, make sure that everything's, up and up. All the information provided is clear and accurate and transparent. And then from that perspective, you just go ahead and, sign this document. You certify that this is correct, accurate, and then you sign it here on whatever date it is, and we go ahead and approve you for funding your business. So you want to change this date, whatever it is, and then we go ahead and sign that off. Here's a checklist for you once you've done all the application, just to give you a little bit of everything that we're looking for when it comes to documentation package, including this application. So first thing is first, you have to have completed this application thoroughly. Provide us with a tri-merged credit report from all three bureaus. Your personal tax assessment for the last 2 years, we need to see that. We need to also see your business tax assessment for the last 2 years, applicable only if you've been in business for more than 2 years, of course. List of companies where you own more than 25% shares, okay, as a business owner. So you want to give us a complete list of that. So if you have a guarantor, so let's say somebody who's guaranteeing for you outside of yourself as a co-signer, then make sure that they complete this whole application themselves as well. As a business, of course, you've registered that business. We need to see your articles of incorporation, your certificate of good standing, typically found in the Secretary of State's website. A proof of business address. It could be a utility statement or of some sort. That can help. Even if it's the EIN number, that's fine. The letter that the IRS gives you with your EIN number, that's fine. If you have a business plan, then that's something we want to see as well, just to make sure that it's congruent with our lending policies, that we're allowed to lend within those guidelines. If you have income, then of course your personal tax assessment will be proof of personal income. We just do proof as a secondary recourse. So let's say if you have checks deposited, etc., proof of checks, that's great. If you have outside sources of income, it could be retirement income, it could be income generated from the assets that you personally own, what could be multifamily units that you own, other properties, or even retirement. Just show us that you have other outsourced sources of income if you have that, if applicable. And of course, last but not least, some personal documentation, the driver's license, social security card, and a recent utility bill, so that we can actually do our background checks. So that's pretty much an overview of how the business funding works. This application on its own is very thorough. It was designed to avoid a lot of time going back and forth in terms of requesting documents from you. This particular funding application will collect most information that we need to make our decision. From that perspective, once we go into our due diligence phase, then we can make a clear determination on whether or not you're approved for funding, and if not, we'll give you a strategy that can actually help you move ahead successfully. So that was today. I hope you stuck by and watched this video completely. Again, you can replay this as this is being recorded live. It'll be available. If you like what you see, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Turn the bell notification on. Once again, this is Ali Taraftar, your guide and mentor. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.